The afternoon heat made the Tulane country road ripple like a mirage. A candy apple red 1969 Mustang fastback hissed at the shoulder, its hood up like a flag of surrender. Beside it paced a white man in a tailored navy suit, sweat beading at his hairline, impatience shining in his eyes. Cole Harrington, software magnate, angel investor, and the kind of Boston millionaire people whispered about when new skyscrapers appeared, stabbed at his phone and listened to hold music that felt like mockery. 2 hours for a tow, he snapped. I have a board call with Singapore in. He checked his watch. 47 minutes. Footsteps scuffed the gravel. A small voice carried over the engine's ticking heat. Sir? Your car's crying. Cole turned to find a little black girl in scuffed sneakers and a faded MITT dress that hung past her knees. Her braids bobbed as she pointed under the Mustang. See the drip? It's sweet-smelling. Could be coolant. Also, the fan belt's squealing under the heat load. Cole blinked. A child diagnosing his vintage pride and joy. Sweetheart, he said, forcing a patient smile. This is a high-compression V8 built for track days. I need a real mech. Mechanic, she finished, already walking to the open hood. I know. I help Uncle Leon at our garage after school. Her backpack hit the gravel with a thunk. She unzipped it, revealing a well-loved tool roll and a pocket multimeter with a cracked screen. He says cars are just puzzles that like to be listened to. I'm Maya, by the way, Maya Johnson. Cole, he said automatically, then caught himself, the habit of anonymity warring with the reflex of courtesy. Cole Harrington. Maya's eyes darted over hoses and clamps with a swift, attentive calm that made Cole's protest die in his throat. When did it overheat? She asked. 40 minutes ago, then stalled, he said, embarrassed by the uninvited hope arriving with this child. I smelled, something like syrup. Maya nodded. Coolant. There's the leak. She tapped a hairline crack on the radiator hose. You're bleeding pressure and cooking your block. She fished out a small tin. Emergency hose tape, high temp. It'll patch you long enough to get to town. Where did you learn all this? My mom, Maya said softly, hands steady as she wrapped the hose. She was a nurse who said machines and bodies both want the same thing, respect and attention. She died last year. The words were plain, unperformed. A fact set gently on the table. Cole began, then stopped because sorry for your loss felt paper thin in the face of a child who had simply folded grief into competence. He noticed then a ring on her finger, antique gold, set with an emerald the exact color of summer rain through leaves. It looked too large for her, secured with a loop of green thread so it wouldn't slip. The stone caught the light, and something inside Cole dropped through the floor of his chest. The crescent inside the emerald. The flaw like a new moon. He knew it. He knew it the way you know your own signature. Where did you get that ring? He asked too fast. Maya's hand paused. For the first time she looked nervous. It was my mother's, she said. My adoptive mother, Diana. She said it was a promise. She told me I'd understand it when I was older. She tucked her lip. I'm not older yet, but I wear it when I need to be brave. Cole stared, memories surfacing like shards through calm water. A shuttered orphanage called Little Angels, a green-eyed toddler he'd visited with a charity team, a promise he made recklessly. I'll come back, just before investors demanded he put away distractions and sentiment. A month later the orphanage closed without notice. The director vanished. Files disappeared. He'd told himself everything had been above board. He'd pushed it down and built faster and higher because that was the only language anyone respected. And now here stood a girl with the same name, the same ring. Maya, can I drive you home? He heard himself ask when the engine coughed back to life under her hands. To say thanks. Maya hesitated, then studied his face the way she had the engine, patient and exact. You can drop me at the corner, she said finally. Aunt Renee says not to accept rides, but you seem stuck. She shrugged. Besides, your temp needle is still flirting with trouble. I'll watch it till we get there. In the car, Cole asked careful, ordinary questions. Where did she go to school? How long had she lived here? Who fixed things when they broke? Her answers built a map that made his jaw tighten. Her mother, Diana, had been a nurse. Car accident, brakes failed. She lived with Aunt Renee and Uncle Leon, who ran a small community garage. She had been adopted at 3. From Little Angels. It closed right after, Maya said. Some people came and said things were irregular. They stopped in front of a tidy, modest house with a blooming rosebush and wind chimes. Made from old wrenches. Maya hopped out and slung her backpack. "Mr. Cole, if you ever get stuck again," she held up his patched hose with a grin. "Listen first. And don't touch the shiny thing until you know what it does." Cole laughed helplessly. "That's painfully relevant to my entire life." She was halfway up the walkway when he said, "Maya?" She turned. The emerald blinked in the late sun. "If you ever need anything, call me." He held out a card, an old reflex that suddenly felt not like power, but like a promise begging to be redeemed. She took it, studied his name. "You're famous," she said matter-of-factly, like diagnosing a belt squeal. "People online argue about you." "They argue about a lot of things," Cole replied. "Some of them true." He watched her vanish into the cool shade of the porch, sat there with the engine ticking and the taste of old guilt in his mouth. Then he called his investigator. "Ramirez," he said, voice low. "I need everything you can pull about a defunct orphanage called Little Angels, and a nurse named Diana Johnson." On a kitchen table inside the Johnson home, Aunt Renee pressed her palms to a yellowed envelope with a look that mixed dread with relief, like a storm that finally breaks. "We hoped we'd never have to open this, baby," she told Maya that night. Diana said, "Give it to Maya only if someone from the Harrington family finds her." Maya traced the emerald's edge with her thumb, the thread soft as the hem of her grief. She broke the seal, and a story began to unspool, the kind that changes not just a life, but the weather in a town, and the way people speak to children who carry tools and rings and impossible courage. Diana's handwriting was the kind that made you trust a diagnosis, firm, measured, with the gentle curves of someone used to writing comfort on charts. "My Maya," it began, and the first two words gave the whole kitchen a heartbeat. "If you are reading this, it means the men I feared have found their way back to you, or you have found your way to them. You deserve the truth spoken plain. Years ago, I took a job at Little Angels because I believed in second chances. The new donor money seemed like a miracle. We could fix the roof, buy fresh fruit, hire a reading tutor. But the donor wasn't a philanthropist. He was a businessman with a project to quietly identify children with unusual aptitudes. They called it Prometheus. They said it would give kids opportunity. It did not. It sorted them like parts on a table. You were different, Maya. The first day, you toddled to the broken oxygen concentrator and tapped the cracked casing like you were listening. Then you pressed the switch. Off, on, off, and looked at me like you were asking a question only the machine could answer. I realized you heard systems the way I hear heartbeats. When the donors realized it too, their interest turned into plans. Tests, contracts, ownership by another name. I ran with you, because love and duty sometimes look like breaking the rules to keep a child human. Maya's knuckles whitened around the paper. Renee squeezed her shoulder and nodded to Uncle Leon, who fetched sweet tea the color of turned leaves and set it down like a calm beside a storm. If the Harringtons have found you, it means Cole did not forget. He was the only one whose eyes changed when he visited. He gave me a ring to give to you one day, not for its gold, but for what it hides. The emerald's crescent is a hinge. Turn it, and you'll find a key. Not metaphorical. An actual key. To proof. To names. To justice. Maya lifted the ring, heart hammering. The stone was smooth with years of wear. She turned it gently. Click, and the emerald's bezel rotated a quarter turn. A tiny cavity opened underneath, where thread had nested. A sliver of metal lay inside, a wafer-thin data, key etched with the same crescent as the stone. Renee covered her mouth. Leon let out a string of words he'd apologize for later. Maya laughed once, partly because wonder feels like dizzy relief. "Mom," she whispered to the air. "You were always 5 steps ahead." On the other side of town, Cole's study glowed with the slick blue of open files. Ramirez's voice came through the speaker. Little Angels closed 12 years ago following financial irregularities. The land was acquired by a Shell LLC, then flipped to a developer tied to Harrington Ventures. The director, a Dr. Lansing, left the country. And there's chatter on old forums about kids who were assessed. Quietly, Cole's face, reflected in the monitor, looked older. Not from time, from recognition. He pulled up photographs from the charity day he'd visited. There he was, younger and hungrier, kneeling to offer a toy engine to a toddler with big eyes and hands already shaped like curiosity. He'd slipped his mother's emerald ring into the nurse's palm because he was sentimental and stubborn and believed that if you put a promise into a precious object, you'd be forced to honor it. His board had called the orphanage a distraction from scale. His father had bragged that real change happens at the level of policy, not pity. And Cole had quietly boxed up the part of himself that heard children like engines. He picked up the phone and dialed another number. Marcus? It's Cole. Remember when you said I only call if I'm ready to burn something down? Get your notebook. The next morning at school, Maya's name traveled on whispers. Not because of the ring, not yet, but because she'd fixed Mr. Adams's ancient projector with a rubber band and a paperclip and had done it before the bell. Little genius, someone muttered, admiration wound around envy. Another kid, older, with a voice like someone who grew too fast and wanted to prove it, sneered. She acts like she owns the place. When Maya passed, he stuck out a foot. She stumbled but didn't fall. Her fingers curled, then uncurled. Respect is a tool, she thought. Use it, even when you don't want to. She picked up his dropped pencil and handed it to him. Try that on somebody who wants to play, she said calmly. The class went very quiet. Instant consequences aren't always loud. Sometimes they're the silence when a bully realizes the room saw him. At dismissal, a black SUV idled near the curb. Two men in matte suits leaned against it with the patience of people paid to wait. One checked a photo on his phone, then checked Maya's ring. Uncle Leon's old pickup rolled in behind them, dented fender gleaming like a badge of honor. He watched the men, then rolled down his window to Maya with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Hop in, kiddo. They drove the long way home. Men like that, Leon said evenly, pretend they're just doing a job. But a uniform is not a conscience. That's a good line, Maya said, absently turning the emerald, feeling the tiny key in her pocket like a coin of courage. Can I use it later? Use it today, he said. Because we're calling a reporter. They did. Marcus Hayes, Boston Globe, who'd been sharpening his pen on stories of billionaires who collected neighborhoods like baseball cards, sat at the Johnson kitchen table that evening and listened like a craftsman. Maya showed him Diana's letter. She showed him the ring. She showed him the key, which Cole's cybersecurity friend verified in a side room on a laptop that whirred like it had secrets of its own. The files bloomed on the screen, logs, emails, video clips, a research initiative called Prometheus that categorized children by enhanced perceptual patterning, accelerated executive functioning, kinesthetic synthesis, terms that missed the point. Kids. Marcus whistled low. This is going to break something open. Break it in the right place, Renee said, voice soft but steel-laced. Not on my niece's back. Marcus nodded. I'll protect Maya's identity until she decides otherwise. And I won't publish a word until I have corroboration and a prosecutor ready to move. He looked to Cole, who had arrived, awkward and deliberate, like a man entering a church for the first time in years. Mr. Harrington, are you prepared to put your name on the record against your own family's deals? Cole looked at Maya, at the ring on her small hand, at the way she folded worry into focus the way he had once folded conscience into growth. I am, he said, because building without honor isn't growth. It's rot. That night, Maya lay awake, counting breaths the way her mother had taught her for fear that wouldn't quiet. She held the ring to the light and whispered, if truth is an engine, show me where to add oil. A breeze rattled the wind chimes made of wrenches. Somewhere in town, the men in the black SUV reported that their target was under observation. Somewhere else, a retired patriarch named Arthur Harrington read an email with a subject line that made him curse. Prometheus records compromised. Power does not sleep well when watched. The meeting on the 50th floor of Harrington Tower was the kind of gathering where shoes were quiet and voices quieter. Arthur Harrington looked like money bred money and forgot how to apologize. Who gave Hayes access? He asked, each syllable polished. The general counsel, thin, tired, tremor at the temple, cleared his throat. We don't know, but he has terms correct enough to worry me. He used the word Prometheus. He asked specifically about enhanced minors and the closure rationale for little angels. Arthur's jaw flexed. Scrub everything. If you have to break the law to protect this company from slander, you will do it, and then you will fix the optics. The elevator dinged. Cole stepped in. He didn't look like a prodigal son returning. He looked like a man unwilling to keep playing a part. He placed a folder on the table. Don't scrub anything. Preserve it. Then call this number. He slid a card to legal. Federal Prosecutor Claire Beaumont. She's waiting for your cooperation. Arthur's gaze sharpened. You plan to ruin your own name? I plan to repair it, Cole said. Along with the names we stole from kids. You always had a weakness for sentiment, Arthur said, almost kindly, like a father patting a boy's head as he takes the hammer away. We did nothing illegal. Those parents signed, when there were parents at all. We offered opportunity. We measured aptitude. You trafficked futures, Cole said. You turned curiosity into intellectual property. Arthur's smile thinned. And you turned gratitude into treason. Get out of my boardroom. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Two security men stepped forward, men in matte suits who'd leaned against SUVs near schools. Cole held up his hands. Careful, he said quietly, eyes flicking to the conference camera. You're on record. Security hesitated. Arthur waved them back with disdain. Run to your reporter. We'll outspin the truth. But money doesn't patch everything. That afternoon, while Arthur's crisis team drafted denials, Marcus sat with Renee and Leon and explained what exposure would mean. They will smear, he said. They will say you taught Maya to lie. They will say you chased money. Renee set her jaw. We chased safety. Then we built family. Leon put a hand on Maya's shoulder. They don't get to name us. We name ourselves. Maya looked at Marcus. I want to speak, she said, then looked at Renee. If you say no, I'll wait. Renee's eyes filled, then cleared. Diana taught us that sometimes the safest place is the truth, she said, voice breaking once, then holding steady. We will stand with you. They planned a public meeting at the community center. Home court advantage, Aunt Renee said. Word spread fast in a town that had learned to watch out for its own. The daycare woman who'd once shushed Maya's too many questions, baked cupcakes with green frosting, and said, I was wrong. Mr. Adams, the teacher with the old projector, dug out the good mic and a lectern that had seen church revivals and union rallies and one surprisingly fierce poetry slam. The man who tripped Maya in class didn't show. That happens, too. On the day, the room filled with neighbors and curiosity seekers, and the kind of people who filmed first and ask later. In the back, two more matte suits took up space like shadows. Cole stood along the wall, trying to be less tall. Claire Beaumont, the federal prosecutor, stayed even farther back, her presence unannounced, her eyes sharp as she weighed evidence and faces. Renee spoke first, because the voice of a community often sounds like the aunt who knows everybody's middle name. She told the story like a nurse giving bad news, gently, accurately, without flinching. We ran because men with money wanted to measure a child for their uses, she said. We hid because sometimes the law needs time to catch up with what's right. We are not hiding anymore. Marcus rolled the camera. He had warned Maya. Say only what you can wake up to tomorrow. She nodded, stepped up on a plastic stool to reach the microphone. The room quieted without being told. My mother said a machine fails in two ways, Maya began, voice clear. Where you can measure, and neglect you pretend not to see. People fail that way too. I fixed a stranger's car last week. He turned out to be famous. He turned out to be connected to the men who scared my mother. But he also turned out to be someone who could choose different. He chose us. She held up the ring. The room leaned forward like a single, curious person. This ring is a promise, she said. It's also a key. Not to money. To memory. She looked to the camera. Prometheus isn't a myth. It was a file. And those files are now with people who will protect the kids you targeted. One of the matte suits in the back moved, hand to his ear. Cole, without meaning to, moved too. Claire Beaumont stepped forward at last and said, light but firm, Gentlemen, I keep your hands where I can see them. Bad men can be bold until someone names the law in a room full of witnesses. Arthur watched a live stream of the meeting from his corner office, knuckles white. Cut the feed, he snarled. His comms guy, 25, making more than his father ever did at the docks, swallowed. Sir, it's everywhere already. Arthur stared at the screen as Maya lifted the ring. For the first time, doubt crossed his face, quick as a bird shadow. It looked alien there. He tapped his desk. A drawer popped. He took out a pistol. The comms guy froze. Sir, he didn't finish. Arthur's hand hovered, then set the gun down. Even tyrants have to calculate. Back at the community center, questions rose like weather. Is she safe? How many kids? Will there be arrests? Claire answered what she could, which was almost nothing and somehow everything. We are here. We will use the tools we have. Your courage matters. A grandmother stood up and said to Maya, "Baby, you come. By my house if you want pie." The room laughed, cried. That sound, the mingled sob and chuckle of a community deciding not to be afraid, is the soundtrack of justice warming up. Outside, the mat suits took a photo of the license plates in the lot. Cole walked up behind them, not threatening, not smiling. Exactly the calm of an expensive lawyer who knows how to ruin your week. "Boys," he said, "you work for my father. You'll find I don't sign your checks." They muttered a slur under their breath. Soft, ugly, the kind meant to be plausible deniable. Cole's mouth tightened. "Say it louder," he said evenly, "so the mic on my lapel can catch it." They paled. Consequences can be immediate when fools forget the room has changed. Morning turned the city glass into sheets of gold. By noon, Harrington Tower's 50th floor felt like a stage dressed for a fall. Cameras waited in innocuous corners. Claire Beaumont's team signed badges under bland smiles. Marcus Hayes set up a streaming rig that looked like a water bottle. Cole wore no tie. He discovered the small freedom of a throat that breathes. Arthur entered last, flanked by Legal like a king who still believed in thrones. "If this is a shakedown," he said, "it will be the most expensive you ever attempt." Claire stepped forward. "It's a preservation meeting," she said. "And a notice." She placed a thin folder on the table. "We have sufficient probable cause to seek warrants. Mr. Harrington, you may speak to me with counsel now, or to a grand jury later." Arthur laughed, "Dry wrong. You dragged a child into this," he said to Cole. "You think jurors will like that?" "I think jurors will like the truth," Cole said quietly. "Even about me." The doors opened. Renee and Leon entered with Maya between them, small but not tiny, steady as a plumb line. "What is this?" Arthur hissed. "A pageant." "It's a statement," Claire said. "And a safeguard. You don't threaten people in public." Arthur's smile returned, charming and precise. "Of course not," he said smoothly. "We're all friends." He extended a hand toward Maya. "And you must be the prodigy. I do admire talent." Maya looked at his hand, then at his eyes, and did not take it. "My mother taught me to shake hands with men who apologize," she said. "You aren't there yet." Cole winced, not because she was wrong, because she was right. They sat. Claire began to ask Arthur routine questions in a tone that sounded like drizzle, but soaked you to the bone. He parried, danced, feigned offense. Marcus's unobtrusive stream had gone live a minute earlier with a delay to blur faces if needed. Comments climbed like ivy. "Is that the kid? That's the millionaire. They're in the same room with the dad. This is a movie." It wasn't. Movies end when the credits roll. This was livelihood. Arthur grew bored, then irritable, then careless. "I don't sign off on individual properties," he snapped at one gentle question. "I sign off on strategy. Our acquisitions created jobs in 6 states. If a few institutions didn't thrive, the market decided that, not me." "Institutions like Little Angels?" Claire asked. "Especially like Little Angels," he said, and made a face as if the name tasted poor. "Sir," Marcus murmured to Claire, eyes on a tiny screen. "You have 200,000 viewers. Leave," Arthur told him, "before I have you removed." "You'll want to be careful about threats, sir," Claire said lightly. "The mic situation is robust." Arthur did not care for being managed by women or by men who used microphones like truth serum. He stood. "Enough. You think you can try me in the court of public opinion? Try me in a real court." He turned to go, and found the doors held by 2 marshals who had ridden an elevator up with a stack of papers and a quiet sense of occasion. "Arthur Harrington," the lead marshal said, "you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States." Arthur froze. The room did that trick where sound goes away and you realize your heartbeat is a drum. "You can't," he said, almost gentler, as if reason could de-escalate handcuffs. "We can," Claire said, and nodded to the marshals. "We did." Arthur turned to Cole, something like confusion breaking through fury. "You did this." "I stopped not doing this," Cole said. "There's a difference." He looked at Maya. She looked back, chin set, ring bright like a small moon. "Broken systems," she said softly, "get loud when they know a wrench finally fits." The marshals read rights. Cameras took pictures more hungry than wolves. Arthur left the room in a suit that had been fitted for victory, but wore surprisingly well for defeat. Outside, a former city councilwoman who had once sold favors to Harrington lobbyists watched on her phone and whispered, "Well, I'll be." Inside, an assistant who had fetched coffee and confessions for 15 years sank into a chair and cried. In quiet relief. Instant karma is rarely instant for the people harmed. But for bullies, sometimes the ground finally remembers gravity. "Are we safe now?" Maya asked Renee in a whisper. Renee brushed a braid behind her ear. "Safer," she said. "Safe is a long word. We'll spell it together." Cole stepped to a microphone, not to grandstand, but because silence can be confused for cowardice. "I made money from speed," he said. "Speed feeds arrogance. Children require patience. My family forgot that difference. Today, we begin paying a debt long overdue." He took out a set of documents. "I am signing the Johnson Center into existence. Independent governance. Endowed with my personal stake. Mission, identify young talent in marginalized communities and offer support without strings. No contracts. No debt peonage disguised as scholarships. This is not atonement. You can't atone in a press conference. It's a start." In the comments of the stream, 1,000 cynics typed 1,000 versions of PR stunt. In a kitchen in another state, a kid who took apart radios to see the song cried, because for the first time someone said you out loud on a stage where men with money used to say, Spring laid a fresh green over the lot where little angels once stood. In its place rose glass and brick and light, the Johnson Center for Young Inventors. On opening day, a banner stretched across the entry. Every talent deserves to flourish. Every child deserves freedom. Kids tugged parents by the hand. Drones buzzed. A brass band tuned itself into joy. Maya, 15 now, tall in the way of girls who decide where their own center of gravity is, walked the corridors as if she'd built them with her hands. In a way, she had. She tapped a wall console. East wing sensors still miscalibrated, she told a tech. Humidity drift will throw the PCB printer off. The tech grinned. Already on it, boss. Don't call me boss, she said, laughing. I'm student staff. You're the reason half our donors learned what a Raspberry Pi is, he shot back. Own it. Cole stood by the donor wall in jeans and a shirt he'd ironed himself. He did not speak first. He'd learned something about the gravity of making room. Claire Beaumont, now U.S. attorney, gave remarks short enough to fit in a good attention span. We prosecuted 6 more executives, she said to polite gasps. We found 5 more institutions like Little Angels. We rescued 37 kids. The rest of the work looks like this building. Patient, not performative. Renee cut the ribbon with a pair of ceremonial shears that had opened 3 fire stations and 1 bakery, and therefore had luck baked in. Leon wheeled out a cart with a plaque he'd carved with his hands in the garage out back, between oil changes and fairy tale fixes. In honor of Diana Johnson, who ran toward right and taught us to listen for the heartbeats in machines and in each other. Tours wound through labs where kids soldered, coded, wrote, painted, danced, because aptitude has more than one dialect. In a corner, a small boy showed Maya a drone he'd built from spare parts and stubbornness. The yaw drifts left, he complained. Maya crouched. She's telling you she needs balance, she said. Give her a little ballast on the starboard motor. The boy adjusted, launched, and yelled when the drone steadied. Pride is a sound like bells. Reporters came, some with good questions, some with tired cynicism. Isn't this just a billionaire's vanity project? One asked, pen poised for a bite. He's not a billionaire anymore, Maya said with a smile that wasn't unkind. He's something rarer. He's a man who returned what wasn't his and gave what he can't get back. The center belongs to kids. If we ever forget that, take the sign down. Cole pretended to check a thermostat until his eyes stopped stinging. Arthur, from a medium security prison where time had lost its angles, watched a local news clip of the ribbon cutting and switched the TV off. He'd been offered programs, chances to mentor, ways to turn experience into service. He refused them all on principle. His principle being that loss was embarrassing and therefore reality was an insult. Sometimes instant karma extends for years. That evening, the auditorium lights dimmed for the center's first showcase. 12 graduates of a 2-year pilot program took the stage. Kids who had come from neighborhoods redlined by banks and blue-lit by police. Kids whose report cards had been littered with the word disruptive because they asked questions at the wrong tempo. They demonstrated clean water devices hacked from discarded filters, an AI sign language tutor trained on their own recorded hands, a low-cost prosthetic with parts from a thrift store printer. The room wept and cheered, and then tried to pretend it hadn't. Maya closed the night with a talk she wrote on a cracked screen at midnight. When I was 10, she said, I patched a radiator hose with tape. It wasn't a fix. It was a way to get home. That's what this is. Not salvation. A home for talent. I used to think the ring on my finger was a promise someone else made to me. Now I think it's the one I make to you. If you have a thing that makes adults say not now, bring it here. We will say now. Cole clapped so hard his hands hurt. Renee cried into a tissue she'd bought in bulk. Leon shouted, That's my girl. And someone in the back yelled, Ours, which was the right correction. After the show, Maya found a quiet corner. She turned the emerald. It no longer had a key. The cavity now contained a scrap of paper with 3 words she'd tucked there the day Cole signed the endowment. Fix what's next. Karma has a route that looks random until you step back. A year after the center opened, a video went viral. A used car dealer in town sneering at a teen girl who asked to see the service records. You people always want a discount, he said, not specifying which people because cowards rarely do. The girl filmed quietly and left. The comments were a wildfire. The next morning, the dealership posted a tearful non-apology. The morning after that, the owner walked into a seminar at the center called Customer Respect is a Sales Strategy and sat in the back with a notebook. When the Q&A opened, he raised his hand. I was that guy, he said. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking how to retrain my staff. Instant karma is sometimes an invitation to do homework publicly. His sales went up 6 months later. He said the quiet part on a panel. Turns out not insulting people is good business. The school bully who'd once stuck out a foot in Maya's path applied for an apprenticeship at the center's machine shop at 19, gaunt and humbled by a recession that had no interest in his swagger. The interview panel included Maya. He stared at his hands. I was cruel to you, he said. No excuse. Maya nodded. You have 2 references? He blinked. She hadn't made a speech. She'd asked for the next right thing. He did the work. He learned to measure twice. He learned to apologize with consistency, which is the only apology that counts. A year later, he designed a jig the shop still uses. He still flinches when he sees green thread. Claire Beaumont got promoted and then did something unusual for a person with her calendar. She mentored a public defender. Justice isn't a badge, she told him over plastic coffee. It's a balance you fight to keep steady. Marcus Hayes won an award he didn't pretend not to want. He put the plaque in the center lobby instead of his living room. The engraved plate read, for listening to a child like she was a source worth protecting. As for Maya and Cole, storytellers like to set up romances where there aren't any because the heart likes symmetry. But this story's love was family love complicated into community love, and that's a better engine for change. Cole married a woman who ran a nonprofit incubator and taught him to take Saturdays off. He learned to fix a leaky faucet without calling a guy. He learned to make pancakes without burning them. He still sometimes woke with the old adrenaline spike of a man chasing the next funding round. On those mornings, he walked the center's quiet halls and breathed until his pulse matched the hum of the 3D printers in the lab. Maya turned 18 with a patent or 2 and a scholarship or 3. She deferred one to spend a year traveling between the 5 cities where sister centers were being built. She taught kids to solder and to speak into microphones with sentences that didn't apologize before they told the truth. She spoke at a conference where men with pocket squares asked long questions disguised as statements, and then sat down, chastened, when she answered the question they should have asked. She wore the ring. She never let it be the point. On a blue fall day, she and Cole visited a small memorial garden on the center grounds, where maple leaves turned the air to stained glass. They sat on a bench with a little brass plaque. For promises kept late, but kept. Cole cleared his throat. There's one part of the story I've never asked you about, he said. The day on the road. You said, your car's crying. That poetry. Where'd you learn it? Maya smiled. Machines talk, she said. Some people just never shut up long enough to hear them. They laughed. Fell quiet. Wind moved the chimes. Finally Cole said, Thank you for letting me help. The sentence walked a thin line between pride and humility and managed not to stumble. Thank you for fixing what you broke, Maya said, not unkindly. That's rarer than genius. She stood. Come on. The East Wing sensors are finally behaving. We're going to print prosthetic hands this afternoon. A bus of third graders is coming to assemble them. You should be there when they realize a thing they built is about to hold a pencil. They walked toward the glass doors. Behind them, the garden light fell across the bench, across the plaque, across the space where a life had nearly been bent into someone else's diagram and refused. Across the space where a millionaire learned that the only wealth that grows when you give it away is dignity. At the door, a new family hesitated, parents nervous and hopeful, a little boy hiding behind his mother's coat, peeking out with eyes the color of new math. Maya crouched. "We've been waiting for you," she said. "The robots are loud. They like it when you talk back." The boy grinned. "I can make loud." "Good," Maya said, holding the door. "We like loud where it counts. And that, more than boardrooms and handcuffs and articles and live streams, is the point this story wanted to make. Justice is an echo that becomes a chorus when people keep singing after the cameras leave.